So today we have a conversation with Raul. Hello, Raul. How do you feel about talking about philosophy
It's something I can do all day.
all day?
You know, I don't know if I'll make sense all day, but it's just something that I enjoy doing. I think human beings by nature like to solve puzzles,
Mhm.
right? And neuroscience has sort of supported that the reward centers of the brain just light up when you're working on a puzzle and you solve it, and and it's a source of pleasure for me and a lot of people
Do you
who,
think do you think that philosophy is a kind of puzzle that we're trying to solve?
yes,
Mhm.
yes, it is.
Mhm.
I think of life itself as an ongoing puzzle.
Mhm. Do you
And
think it's possible to solve it, like in the
no, no, it's
end?
not. You can solve little things, but to gain, to solve life itself, I would be very disappointed if
Mhm.
somebody was able to do that, right?
Mhm.
Because then there's nothing left to, to think about.
Yeah.
In fact, I've I was just last night, I was kind of trying to imagine what if, for example, physics reaches the point where it says, well, there's nothing to discover anymore. We've discovered everything about, the fundamental forces, about the fundamental particles. Uh, there's nothing left. Well, and first of all, I don't believe that'll ever happen. But what if that happens? What next? What's next?
Well, I
You know?
think for like just my intuition, for us as human beings, it'll still like even physics will solve all problems and will describe everything in physical terms. Still, it's
Mm-hmm.
gonna take a human being a lifetime to learn everything what they like all these concepts and all these
Right.
ideas and their connection.
Yeah. 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 That's another thing that that for it takes a lifetime to learn all these things. One of the things I thought about and uh, was we live in there is a qualitative, there's a fundamental difference between our the world today and maybe 400, 500, 2000 years ago, and there's so much information that there really, I don't know if there are people who are capable of integrating all of this and to get a really good understanding of, or at least view
Mhm.
of the world, as in the same way that, for example, not that he was always right, but he kind of connected everything in the way that, for example, Aristotle did, or maybe Ibn Sina did, in that their discourse was all across the different science, ethics, and metaphysics and everything, and they somehow had a unified, conception of the
Mhm.
world. And I
Yeah,
don't know if, go ahead.
I've heard the saying that Leibniz was the last man who like
The last,
knew everything, and after that, it's just became so complicated. And
right,
you
right,
you may be an expert in math or in physics or in biology, but in other areas you may be completely ignorant person.
right.
Uh,
Because there's just so much information you need to, and knowledge you need to learn and master before you can say something intelligent in those fields.
yeah, but it's
And
also the beauty of it, right? So when like
yeah,
physics solves all problems, but there's
oh,
lots of things behind physics. Really,
right,
just
absolutely.
you may go on and study all different, not just physics but math, biology,
Yeah,
neurophysiology, whatever.
yeah.
Like, okay, let me ask you, like, what have been the most remarkable concepts of like in philosophy that you encountered in your life?
For me,
Yeah.
uh this might sound very, people might say, oh, what's so remarkable about that? But for me, the concept of a brute fact
Mhm.
is remarkable. That there are just some things, and I believe this to be true. There are just some things that are beyond our comprehension or beyond our explanation. It's just, I think the other word is ineffable,
Mhm.
or and for example, for me, qualia is, we will never be able to explain what it is, because you know we neuroscientists have been able to sort of unravel the, what they call it, the neurological basis behind it. What slowly they're for example, I just read that the people who got the Nobel Prize for medicine were the scientists who figured out the physiology of the sense of touch
Mhm.
and heat, and that's the best we can do, is figure out the molecules and how the nervous system generates a sense of touch and sense of temperature, but beyond that, we can't do anything.
Mhm. What are your personal thoughts, like on, let's say, objectiveness of this qualia? Is it something outside of you, or it's something that you or your mind, your consciousness just creates,
Oh, it's
or like
something inside me.
something
You know,
inside? Mhm.
it's something that happens, and you cannot use your mind to explain your mind,
Mhm.
right? And that's a thing about qualia. My metaphor for that is the Ouroboros. If you know about that, it's the Greek uh, picture of a snake eating itself, starting with the
Mhm.
tail,
Mhm.
right? If you try to figure out what qualia is, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, but
You're using.
can you
Go
figure
ahead.
out it without language, like through some direct experience, or by any other some ancient?
No, I can feel it, but I won't be able
Mhm.
to describe it without language. You know, even as an internal language of thought.
Mhm.
I do believe that the concept of language of thought has some validity to it. You
Mhm.
know, and I'm no, let me reiterate again, I don't feel like I'm an expert in anything I'm talking about. You know, I'm just a student here.
Why do they call it brute facts? Like,
Be, be, because it just is. It's brute. You can't. There's no explaining it. You know, you can dig behind it and find and say, where does this arise, other than saying, well,
just
some
exist.
people's, yeah,
Hmm.
some people say it arose because God made it so. That's not a valid
Hmm.
explanation
Just
to me.
simply add something even more complex, right?
Yeah, yeah, you're just inventing something else
Hmm.
to explain something you can't explain. Now you have to explain that. You
Hmm.
know?
Uh, what was the time when you like stumbled upon these brute facts? Like, did it happen when you was like in early age, or it was?
No, I mean, it just happened the last 3 or 4 years when I started seriously. No, 5 years. I
Mhm.
started seriously looking into philosophy about 5 years ago, when my
Mhm.
youngest daughter, or well, I have only one daughter, my youngest child went off to college, and I said, okay, let's do something. And
Mhm.
I've always said I want to educate myself further. I want to be a learned man, and I started reading Plato.
Mhm.
And when you read Plato, I never even finished the whole book. I bought the book of all of Plato's works, all the dialogues. But after each dialogue, then you get interested in this topic and that topic, and then I start reading about it. I start reading about it, and it's so hard to get back to Plato,
Mhm.
because then you go back to the beginnings, but you already know so much about what followed on after that, and and I'm interested in philosophy, not the history of philosophy.
Mhm.
So I still go back once in a while. But
Do you like this style of Plato? Like, as far as I can remember, when I was reading Plato, like back in 2012,
mhm,
at the beginning it was very fascinating, but then
right,
the more you read like these kind of artificial dialogues, when
yeah,
opponents of Socrates always tell him, "Yeah, you're right, Socrates. That's correct. I think so. This is true." And
right,
like sometimes it's just very very hard to follow. Like you want you know what's going to happen next, but still like this form sometimes it distracts you. Sometimes it makes you feel
yeah,
kind of awkward.
right. It's it. I see what you mean.
Mhm.
And it's I'm not going to say I'm smarter than Plato, but later on you say, oh, he made so many logical mistakes in terms of for a lot of his proofs he's using analogy, and analogy explains but it doesn't prove.
Mhm.
And a lot of his saying, we have just proved this. No, he did not. He just used an analogy. But it's still, it's for somebody 2,500 years ago to be thinking this deeply
Yeah, it's pretty
is
convincing when you make find a
it's
suitable analogy and
eh,
show how something works,
mhm,
especially such hard concepts like justice or
right,
good
right.
in good in itself.
Yeah. And another thing I've also that struck me was that how do you know these that there's a this realm of the forms.
Mhm.
So and now people say, oh no, that was just an allegory. We don't know that. He probably believed it, that there's a realm of the forms. And so I said, well, how do you know this? Why are you asserting it as fact? Or, and which is again, I don't claim to be smarter than Plato. The fact that he asserts this is just a reflection of the times he lived in, which is pre-scientific, and 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 we are not aware of the assumptions that we make. We try to be careful with our assumptions, but we don't know whether we're making one assumption that we're not even aware of. And he was raised at a time when belief in the gods was basically widespread. Everyone did,
Mhm.
and if you did not, then somebody would kill you for it.
Yeah, it's like Socrates, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So, but that so going back to brute facts is, and then I heard the term. I listened to basically a recorded lecture
Mhm.
about one of those introductory philosophy things. I said, yeah, it could just be a brute fact, like like, and and we just accept it. There's no explaining it, but it feels feels right to us, and and but I am not ready to accept just everything as soon as you say I can't explain it. Oh, that's a brute
Mhm.
fact.
Mhm.
Actually, no,
Mhm.
that's
Hmm.
that's not good thinking. That's
So I guess but brute facts is not it's not a form, right? It's in terms of Platonic forms. It's kind of ontology versus epistemology, right? So ontology, it's like brute fact, and it exists, and it
Mhm.
doesn't need an explanation to exist,
Right,
right? And
right, yeah,
according to Plato, no, like the first thing which exists is kind of form, right? An
yeah,
ideal, and then
yeah,
we only have everything else as manifestation of that form, or
right,
realization, actualization of that form.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
You know, it's
Okay.
like that.
Uh, so the next question would be: did philosophy help you to become a better person? Like,
I think it does. I
mhm,
think it does. You know, and especially in terms of uh, there are some concepts in my readings that I really like, and one of them is the fundamental misattribution error. I don't know
Mhm.
if you've heard of that.
Uh,
It's
I probably heard, but it will be better if you clarify it.
yeah, and it's more from a lot of it is I think it's used in psychology, or but it's basically an out, psychology is just an outgrowth of philosophy, right?
Mhm.
It's for example, when somebody cuts you off in traffic, you know,
Mhm.
and a lot of us, and I did this too. I just said, "Oh, what an awful person! What a horrible person! That
Yeah, yeah. But
you know,
when you got somebody else,
yeah,
right? Mhm.
yeah." And then fundamental attribution error is, why would you right away uh, attribute that bad behavior to bad character?
Mhm.
Maybe he was in a hurry and really needed to get ahead of you, or maybe he just wasn't paying attention, you know, and maybe he or she just made a mistake, miscalculated, and thought you were further than, you know, than further behind than you actually were. So, and most of the time, it's probably that. So when somebody, this attributing bad actions right away to severe character flaws, I guess is what part of a type of fundamental attribution error, and
Mhm.
I've read about that, and it helps you live more
Mhm.
more peacefully, more calmly, to say that,
Did you become less judgmental
yeah,
towards other people?
right, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's always better. That you're not always upset that somebody's doing something to you. That
Yeah,
there's
and it's
so
kind of
many.
self-awareness, right? So you like first you make some judgments, but then you think,
Yeah,
okay, why do I make this judgment?
yeah,
And then you
yeah,
read something related to people's behavior, and then you realize that it's kind of bias which we all share. Like,
yeah, yeah. And so it helps on a practical level. It makes life, calmer.
mhm.
It's you feel less uh, of that the world is so conflict ridden. Not that I'm saying it isn't, but what we don't need to view every little thing as a deep conflict, especially these days.
Mhm.
And the other thing, yeah, and I think that one of an example of what philosophy, just being more knowledgeable and being determined to use that knowledge to help you live a a better life,
Mhm.
or just even
But
a more serene life.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I guess like you also need to like it's not just not judging everybody, but you have to kind of be aware that this is a common mistake or common bias. But in some cases, there is a bad person, right?
Oh yes,
And
yes, yes, there
it's like
is.
if you treat everybody equally and say, okay, now I shouldn't judge
No.
anybody, it's also it's also bias, right? You have to.
Oh yes, yes, it is. It is. I mean, but you are perfectly right. So you need have to understand the fundamental attribution error
Mhm,
intelligently, you know, and
mhm.
that there really are some bad people, and who will shoot you if you cut them off in traffic. At least here in the States, you know. And so yeah, but there's not. I don't think there's that many of them, except that the ones who really are bad are just, amazingly, amazingly,
Do you think that philosophy, on average, makes us better, or there's some arguments among philosophers, and they tend to be very disagreeable, and so the point may be that like philosophy brings conflict, makes
brings.
people makes people argue and makes them whatever angry.
No.
jealous of each
Oh,
other.
um, I don't think that is the fault of philosophy. People who are always at odds with other people,
Mhm,
who always find reason to argue or fight or be in conflict with other people, they will find reasons for that,
mhm,
no matter what, and if philosophy gives you the opportunity to to as I said, try to live a more serene life without being deluded about reality, then I think it's a positive,
mhm,
a net positive. People
mhm.
who argue, very heatedly over philosophical points, they will argue about everything.
Yeah, that's true.
you know, yeah.
Okay. Is there any particular school of thought that appeals to you more than other schools?
Uh, yeah, there are actually two things well, three. I was thinking about it, and the broader as a point of view, and it's not. I went out and read about it and said, yeah, this is the one. I
Mhm,
think the pragmatism. It's called American pragmatism or pragmaticism, as Pierce called it, is something that I have gravitated towards without even knowing what it is. You know,
mhm,
I just say, oh, I think this makes sense to me. That for example, that um, I've, for example, come to the conclusion, or at least this is my working conclusion now, that uh, we never really know if something is true or false or right or wrong, or is it the best possible, are we in the best possible world, or what the best possible world is. I think we just, our criteria for man, main criteria for contentment is about whatever an idea or a situation or a program is. Well, does it work well enough,
mhm.
right?
The
Because
functionality, right?
yeah, yeah, and I'm finding out that's mainly, and I might be wrong, but so far it looks like that's what pragmatism is all about. But forget about all these ultimate truth or things like that. It's it basically, and then we have no choice but to use as our criterion, does it work well enough?
Mhm,
Because we don't really know what an ideal world looks like, you know, and we just, in fact, the other term is sounds a little pessimistic, is we just muddle through history, we just muddle through life, and if we avoid major disasters, then we're doing fine,
mhm.
you know. And so that's also related a little to Epicurus. So I like Epicurus mindset that don't strive to, of course he's been misrepresented
By
by
Stoics.
Christianity.
Uh,
Yeah, by
by
church.
Christianity, by Stoics, yeah, sure.
Yeah, or 2,000 years or so. It wasn't really for what's the term for unbridled pleasure.
Uh,
I'm so bad.
let me think a few seconds. I'll remember
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
Uh, I know that it was eudaimonia. It's Aristotelian term, eudaimonia,
hmm
kind of this
hmm
pleasure. But
yeah,
in Epicure,
yeah.
hedonism.
There. It
Yeah,
wasn't really a hedonist
yeah,
as it is defined today. Somebody who's just
yeah. But
all for us.
mostly his pleasure, his idea of pleasure, it was kind of knowledge and
Yeah, yeah,
science and pursuit of intellectual
r-
passions,
right. And
in opposition to bodily passions.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's, I think, and there's a sort of a version of that now being talked about. It's like Hygge, or something about Scandinavian notions of contentment,
Mhm.
of happiness. And it goes back to that, I think. And I think that's, because one of the things he says that, well, the momentary pleasure, for example, of whatever it is, usually they talk
Food,
about
sex.
food and a fantastic meal and things like that.
Mhm.
That doesn't lead to happiness, because then when the days you don't have it, then you're unhappy because you don't have it,
Mhm.
and then so I wouldn't live that type of life completely devoid of momentary spikes of enjoyable experiences, but it helps you to have that perspective that don't base your happiness on being able to
And
have a
it's,
fantastic meal every day,
yeah, they see the
right?
peaks, right? So
Yeah,
these peaks are they may have happened, but ultimately it's about this baseline, or
right,
this
right. And
stability. Yeah.
it's nice because then you connect it to, in psychology, there's the notion of habituation, right?
Mhm.
You get used to something that used to be enjoyable, and it's not enjoyable anymore. So you're looking to the next level up, and so that Epicurus figured that out 2000 plus years ago.
Mhm.
That's also
Yeah, I think in the
amazing.
same time you may find pleasure in everyday things, right?
Yes,
So you
yeah,
kind of learn to assign some subjective evaluation to
right,
daily activities, like every basically everything. Just go for a walk may be very
yeah,
pleasurable.
right. And for me, it's thinking about philosophizing and things like that. That is for me a truly pleasurable activity.
Mhm.
I can just, as said, I can just do it all day, and think and read and reflect upon things, and
Do you have some experience of such some maybe some insights when you like thinking about about something, you figure out something and it makes you feel really amazing, and then like you figure out something else, and then like this simple experience, it becomes like a peak, right? So you get to the point where simply by thinking you exalt yourself to like some higher.
yeah, in a way like that, and yeah. And the thing is, I say, oh, this is some amazing thing that I figured out. And then if I read some more, I say, oh, somebody thought about that
Mhm.
years ago,
Mhm.
But it's still the
Yeah, but
fact
it's
that,
still, yeah, especially if
yeah,
somebody was a philosopher, right? And you
yeah,
like you figure
yeah,
out something on your own, then you discover like some
right.
other philosopher.
It
Or
actually makes me feel good
yeah,
that,
it's
that
like I
oh, wow,
yeah.
I figured out something that this guy thought about, and for example, like this one, the Pragmatism, and you know and then I read and said, oh wow, Charles Sanders Peirce or Dewey
Mhm.
or thought about this years ago. It doesn't make me feel stupid. It actually makes me feel good that uh, you know but that also makes me think that certain ideas or concepts, whether in science, philosophy, or whatever, are in a way inevitable. There's a buildup of knowledge underneath it that eventually somebody will figure out the next step, make the connection.
Mhm.
And certainly Newton said that, you know, and certainly Einstein, if he hadn't discovered those, if he didn't write those 5 papers in
Yeah, somebody
1905,
else will come
somebody
and
else would have,
discuss.
maybe a little later, but it's everything was pointing to it. But this doesn't minimize Einstein's achievements.
Mhm.
You know, the fact that he made that leap in logic and
Yeah, some great
conceptualization.
disco like in Darwin, for example. There was another guy, I guess his name was Wallace, or when
Yeah,
Darwin came up with this evolution theory, there was another guy who also wrote
right,
the
right,
same stuff. And
right.
Newton, by the way, was with Leibniz. They were competing about
On
calculus, and
calculus.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The amazing thing about Newton was that he figured out most of uh, the laws of gravity several years before he published it. Like
Mhm.
he solved it when he was much younger and then set it aside. And then was it Hook or whatever who started working on it and then asked him, what do you think of this? And I think he said, oh yeah, I solved that years ago. I'm just in awe of
Do you think, like, let me first describe my experience.
mhm.
Sometimes it seems I also may think all the time, like from morning to the late evening, and it's very fascinating. And it feels as if I don't need anything else, just be aware, be able to think. But sometimes, for example, when I write poetry, sometimes it
Mhm.
leads to the situation when I have immense pleasure for few days, 3 days. I write something great. I think, wow, that's wonderful. I,
Right.
I'm so happy that I was able to make it. But then for the next week, I feel kind of, like I achieved this. Like I write something, I come up with some poem, and then there's a big downfall. So
Let down.
yeah,
Right.
and for a week, or for even, like, sometimes even more, for 10 days, I can think at all.
Yeah.
I suffer, like, not suffer, but basically, like, everything becomes so dim, and
Sure.
I I I don't know. It seems like it makes me even think, like, when I now want to write something, some poetry, or to engage in some long project, it always makes me think before I start doing this, like, what if it leads to some, a month of this state. So and it's kind of new thing, because I remember, like, 5 years ago, maybe even earlier, like when I especially was writing in Russian language, like, it never happened. I
Right.
worked on and on, and there was few states when I was kind of
Yeah.
overwhelmed,
Yeah.
but still I could think all the time. Like, for half a year, for example, I could
Hmm.
follow certain routine and make things, and I never experienced something like I experience now. And after making something, like, I need to wait 5 or even 10 days until I get back to my, like, basic stable,
Right.
stable existence.
I don't know. Maybe it's just nature. It's
Hmm.
aging. You know,
Hmm.
maybe it's remember I what they say that mathematics and physics is a young man's or young woman's game,
Yeah, it's like chess
right?
too, right?
Yeah,
After,
that
after,
you
after.
really need that all your mental faculties to be a tip top shape, and it's usually people in their 20s
Hmm.
who, and maybe that's I have that, I'm starting to feel the burden of a how hard it is with a diminished short-term memory,
Hmm.
right? I mean, I cannot do mental arithmetic as well as I used to do when I was younger, and things like that. My working
Hmm.
memory is just, and what can I do? You just work around it. You use pencil and paper more, and it also changes the way you think, and maybe you see things that you would not have seen if you had, you know, if you had a more, not perfect but better short-term memory.
Hmm.
Maybe
But
that's
for me, it's more, it's like it gets kind of uncontrollable. So I start thinking, and then, like, I get more and more some, like, ideas, thoughts. I write
yeah,
them down, but
right.
the more appears, and I continue writing, and then, like I try. I even come to the point when I say, okay, stop. I shouldn't think for one day, for 2 days. Let's go to the forest to walk,
Yeah,
to, like, to
yeah.
forget. And it's like this uncontrollable thing. Yeah, it's like, now it's, I guess, one of the things I'm struggle with.
Hmm.
It's okay. I even, like, this week I'm studying the concept of Dao,
Uh-huh.
and there, like, get rid of all thoughts, don't think about anything, be like in Stoics they have the similar concept, be aligned with nature.
Right.
So, like,
Yeah.
and Dao itself can be described in language. So don't use thinking too much. So I'm trying to do something like this.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, go ahead.
mhm. Okay, there is another question. Like,
Sure.
would you agree or disagree with the statement that philosophy is becoming more and more popular?
Uh, that one, I cannot. It's become more popular from my point of view because I'm immersed in it
Mhm,
now, and so I don't know. Maybe I'm just experiencing, confirmation bias or immediacy bias, because that's what you're thinking about. That's what then you see it out there, right? So I cannot uh, have faith on my own judgment, and
mhm.
I'd
But
like
still,
to
like,
think that.
still, like, I'm asking, like, your opinion, your personal experience. Like, yeah, you're studying philosophy, and you see
Mhm.
it more and more. But do you think it may be like that with the rise of technology and the internet, social networks, just philosophy, gains more and more attention, and people want to know some deep, truths and knowledge, and
Uh,
like, as far as I can see, like, it's everywhere. I go on YouTube, there's hundreds of channels. They, like, it's not just superficial channels. People
right.
made hundreds and sometimes even more videos, like studying, like 100
Y-
years ago there was probably like 100 histories of philosophy
Yeah.
or so, and now
Well,
there are thousands and probably
yes, there's a
billions
lot.
of
I
them.
mean, and that's one thing I like about, if I tried to study philosophy to educate myself when I was younger, before the internet was as mature as it is now, I probably would have given up, because, you know, it's just too much information that you need to build up. And if you don't have it in easy access, then the struggle just to learn, it's a lot harder, right? For now, if I'm reading a text, maybe something, for example, when I was reading Plato and there's a
Mhm.
concept I don't understand,
Yeah, go
then
on
you can just go
Wikipedia.
to, yeah, right, or the Stanford philosophy website. But
Yeah,
no,
encyclopedia.
I don't. Yeah, there is a lot, but really the way to judge that is how much of what's in the internet, uh, in relation to things that are not the other topics, other fields. I don't know what the count is. Is philosophy just relative to other sports or gossip or
Mhm.
literature? Is it a bigger proportion of what's talked about in the internet compared to 40 years ago, or is it just the
Mhm.
same proportion? It's just that
But
there's, people are just speaking up more.
it seems like everything expands as the universe expands, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
philosophy grows, all other
right.
sorts of knowledge, and
It's just so much knowledge and information. And
mhm.
go back to, I hope there are people who are able to grasp most of it and come up with an integrated view of what the world is, because there's is it inevitable, the amount of information for any field is just so much that one person cannot say something intelligently uh, when thinking about the whole of human knowledge.
Yeah, I've
That's
recently
it.
came across a channel, like, I forget the exact name, but there's theory of everything, like theories of everything.
Oh, yeah.
And there were some guys basically trying to make, like, what you say, like, an integrated view of
Right.
everything, combining
Of everything.
physics, psychology,
Yes.
philosophy,
Yeah.
religion,
Yeah.
basically everything.
Yeah.
And
You know.
from my perspective, it's very versus spirit. Like, I don't know. I think that still, like, there's, like, when you try to make this theory of everything, you
Mhm.
basically, like, if you as you said at the beginning, if you make it then what else the rest of us are going to do, right? So it seems like
No.
every person can make it on like
Yes.
for
Yes.
themselves.
Right.
And the more like if there's somebody with a theory, then somebody else comes up with another theory, and
Yeah.
you unite them. But now there's so many fears, right?
There's so many, and right, and so and just so much information. And I think is it the concept of a collective mind, not in terms of a collective mind that's an enslavement of other minds, but maybe that's just that's what we have to that's the only way we can make sense of of the universe or the world now is through a collective mind. And
Do you think
that
it's possible that there's something like collective mind, but self-conscious collective mind? So we say
uh
that the internet is collective mind, but it seems that it's not self-conscious, right?
right, yeah, I don't think there is a that's ever possible, or at least I don't see how that can be possible, self-conscious
Well,
collective
perhaps
mind.
technology may be able to unite. Like, for example, now they have this Neuralink, Elon Musk Neuralink. This
Yeah,
they basically like brain machine interface.
right.
So they create an equipment, and this equipment may connect like one, two, three, five people, and ideally, right? So, for example,
Yeah,
we may put it on, and then you have access to my psychological experience. I have
right.
access to your, but
Yeah,
it's not just I have access to your and you have access to mine, but there's like a kind of new thing emerged out of
exactly.
both of
Right.
our.
I know what you mean, because
Mhm.
if I just have access to yours, then I'm still just using my
Yeah, yeah,
mind
yeah, yeah. It's like
to comprehend what's in your mind, and
yeah.
so it's still separate. Uh, whereas fusing that and from there you get a. I'm very skeptical
Yeah,
of
it's like a
something like that.
it's like a matrix. Like so, there's.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's nice to think about. It's a
Mhm,
nice mental exercise,
mhm.
but you know the one thing I've also gravitated on is, for me, the best idea ever that the Homo sapiens has come up with is the theory of evolution.
Mhm,
I think I think that is, sort of, it beats, for example, quantum theory. It beats anything in physics, because it really, for me, it's a nice, it's the best starting point for thinking about history, about human nature, about why people are and not why the world is the way it is. Well, the word world in terms of the biological world, which
mhm.
is something
So
that
it's like becoming more and more complex,
yeah,
and
yeah, and you for you don't have to resort anymore to things like, well, because God made it so, because
mhm.
it's a brute fact. No, no, it's not. I mean, you can go and look into, is it consistent with evolution? And so I would take the theory of evolution as sort of a starting point for
Mhm.
thinking about human nature.
Is there any purpose in evolution? What do you
Or
think?
no, no,
Just
there's
random.
yeah, yeah, it is, and it's not optimal.
Mhm.
Evolution is not, doesn't come up with the optimal solution. Otherwise, we would never get sick. We would never, right?
Yeah, we'll never die, right? So.
Yeah. And so, but it anchors everything, and it's not an absolutist thing, because the theory of evolution is constantly being evolved into something that better explains how, the,
It's still very hard to like. Well, it, I may imagine how apes became humans, like in few whatever million years. It may be
or you
quite
mean
possible.
how,
But
you
how
mean
like
how
cells, how
no,
cells?
wait, one thing.
Yeah.
You can imagine how apes and humans evolved from the single
Yeah,
species.
yeah, yeah.
Is
I
what you,
understand
yeah.
from one
I know.
common
I know that's
ancestor.
what you mean. I'm just
Yeah, yeah.
being picky. You
Yeah,
know.
but how cells, like some cells, just become such organisms as we are? Well, again, it's like 4 billion years. It's
Yeah.
seems a lot of time to,
Right. Right. You
but
know. And
still, yeah, I don't stop here on humans. I always think, okay, we're just yeah, we're
yeah.
just a step in evolution, and
Yeah.
probably there's
Yeah.
no way to like no need to remain humans forever. Probably will become something else
Or we might just disappear. You know.
yeah, some
Yeah. I mean, humans have been around for what? Maybe 6 million years. Humans and our, you
yes,
know.
two, I guess 2 million,
Yeah.
or maybe I mistake, but it
I
seems
mean,
two, like the history of humans 2 million
about
years.
3 million or something like that for the first
Mhm,
Homo. You know,
mhm.
and that's still in a way contrived because the species are really just the definition of species is just a made up arbitrary, you know, delineation. But
It's like
consider the
we make distinctions, right? So
right.
we say, oh, okay, this was like when 10,000 years ago they invented language, and
Yeah.
it was like not language but agriculture, right?
Right.
Started like a new revolution. Before like 50,000 50,000 years ago, there was language invented probably at that
Yeah.
time, and
Yeah.
it's like a new species. And now we created computers and the internet,
Right. Yeah.
and in other like probably 1,000 year from now, people say, "Oh, this was the age when they invented the internet," and it's like a new
Yeah.
species, cyborgs, or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, and that's, you know, going back, that's why I really like the idea of evolution as a starting point to figuring out, you know.
So can I say that it was the most valuable thing that you've learned from philosophy, like the theory of evolution?
Yeah, even though it's not technically, you know, officially from philosophy, it's from
Mhm.
biology, right?
Yeah, but
But
it's like science, right?
it's still, yeah,
Mhm.
knowledge. I
No.
consider it
Mhm.
as the most amazing and maybe important idea that Homo sapiens has come up with
Mhm.
as a way to understand ourselves and why we do the things we do and how maybe we can stop doing the bad things that we do, you know, to understand that.
Mhm.
And because, you know, I think it was a Russian biologist who said that nothing in biology makes sense without evolution, you know.
Mhm.
Something like that. If everything in biology makes sense when you think of it as from an evolutionary framework,
Mhm.
and I really believe in that, you know. And
How
from
about
there,
language? Do language evolve? Is there evolution of language?
oh, I think so. I believe it is, and I think language is something that is biologically innate, and and that's you know, this is from my daughter. She's a psychology major and she took a class in linguistics, and she mentioned there is the case of the deaf children. There's a home for deaf children
Mhm.
in Nicaragua, and without anyone teaching them, they developed a sign language of their own. And
Mhm.
so this is a prima facie, you know, evidence that the language instinct is built into our physiology, into our genes, that there is, you know, that Chomsky was right, that there is really a
Innate.
ability,
Mhm.
innate
Mhm.
language building capability, as opposed to reading and writing,
Mhm.
which it's not. It's something that's learned. Every person has to be taught, or has to be taught to read and write. Um,
Yeah, it's quite recent, like writing and reading, just few
yeah,
hundred, basically on
five
a
thousand years ago or something, five thousand three
yeah,
hundred.
but on a broad scale, it's just few hundred years. Like in Russia, for example,
Oh, yeah.
150 years ago, 90% of people were illiterate.
Illiterate, yeah.
Yeah, and only after this advent of communism, like communists made everybody like learn to
Right.
to
Yes,
write, and yeah,
and the
preschools.
remarkable, yes,
Hmm.
I agree with you. And the remarkable thing, and this is again reading about it and people who study this, uh, the neuroscience of writing and reading. They're saying that learning to read and write from a young age, and then of course the best time to learn it is while you're still young. It actually changes the architecture of the brain, and it enhances symbolic thinking and things like that. And we are, in a sense, smarter if we learn to read and write, because it rewires the brain and enhances certain abilities that allow the kind of mental abilities that is useful for science and systematic thinking and things like that.
Yeah, I would say for me it was the major transformation. I was 21 when I started
Mhm.
writing my journal, and my life
Mhm.
changed completely after this moment. So
Right.
I would say, like it actually what we call consciousness. Like for me, I became self-conscious after I started writing my journal, and everything that was
Right.
before it was kind of vague. And I was like 18 years old. I had I had work, I had girlfriend,
Mhm.
I participated in all forms of social interactions, but still, I wouldn't like when I look back, it was all like unreal. And when I started,
Yeah.
and when I started writing and thinking, and when I learned to read, and now it's like when I think back about my life,
Mhm.
I start like it's a new period. It's
Right.
some if we compare it with historical development, for me, it's like scientific revolution when
Yeah.
Copernicus discovered that Earth revolves
Right.
around the sun and not vice versa. So for
Because
yeah, for me, it's also some sort of this.
yeah, it's like a revelation, right? Because writing, you cannot write without thinking, right? Writing makes you think, and this is something that I've puzzled over. When I was in high school or college, we'd always have these writing assignments, and I did what most people did, right? Which is, oh, I have to write an essay. You sit down and you have your pen and you're going to write, and what the hell do I write about? Right? And then I realized I took a class in what do you call this, expository writing, and that's when I realized that writing is about 90% thinking
Hmm.
and 10% or even less sitting down and putting those thoughts into words on a paper or
Hmm.
on a typewriter. And that if and now I know that if I want to write something, I have to think a long time before I even start to sit down and write something. And yeah, I perfectly, I agree completely with you. When you start
Yeah,
writing, then
for me, it's also an expansion of memory. So whatever I wrote down, if
yeah,
it's written by my hand, it's like for me, it's a part
right.
it's a part of me. And then like after 10 years of writing, I may basically go back and check it all and see whether.
I know. I look at some of the things I wrote, maybe just even 2 years ago. I said, "Wow, I wrote that."
Yeah, I also have this like I said, wow, this is possible. Then and it's both. Sometimes it's like, oh, it's so terrible, like
Yeah, yeah.
this is
Oh,
so
wow.
stupid. This is
Yeah,
so
wow means
stupid.
two things. It could
Yeah,
mean really amazing or really dumb.
yeah.
You know?
Okay.
Mm,
Uh, let's talk about reality. What is
okay.
real? What
Yeah.
is real?
Real
Yeah.
in terms. Well, for me, I'll start with physical reality,
So
right?
senses, right?
For yeah,
Uh-huh.
it has to be either. a substance or whatever, an entity, or that it's either matter or energy, which are
So
the same thing.
Platonic forms we derive from our senses, right?
Yeah, Platonic forms are, for me, a
Secondary.
product of imagination.
Uh-huh.
And
But
now you
where imagination comes from? Like, does it come from senses?
go ahead.
Yeah, does it come from
Uh,
senses?
no, it maybe, I think your senses, that means perception,
Mm-hmm.
right? If that's what you mean by senses,
Yeah,
the ability to
yeah, like
perceive things, whether touch,
vision, hearing,
vision,
touch.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
senses, perceptions. Uh, I think imagination is enhanced by having the senses, but the senses are not necessary for
Uh-huh.
imagination. But it's you get it's easier to be imaginative if you have a very uh, active, or whatever, sensitive
Uh-huh.
senses.
Can something
Uh,
come to your imagination which is not a part of this sensual world,
um,
which you haven't perceived?
oh yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, but not for example, you may look at the sun and you may make a notion of like circle, right? But it's
Right,
yeah,
right,
you may say perfect circle, right? It doesn't exist. Sun is not perfect circle,
yeah,
but still you may make a concept based
yeah.
on what you see. But what if, like, are there some entities which can be perceived and still you may imagine something, like, for example, time machine, or the time itself, or space itself, or nothing, or some
Mhm.
hardcore
Um,
things?
I don't know. I mean, eh, I think the act of imagination draws a lot from experience,
Hmm.
and so, like, for example, you cannot explain the color blue to a person who's been blind since birth.
Hmm.
There is just no way. I don't think that they can really understand what blue means. So it, yeah, I tend to think that whatever you are able to imagine has to have some basis in something that you experienced.
Hmm.
You know.
So it's real. It's something that, like, you may perceive, or you may
Uh,
imagine based on your perception.
I was about to say, well, what do we mean by real? I mean, it's a real idea in the sense that I thought about it, but
Hmm.
whether it's a real in terms of matter and energy, that's different, and so I certainly accept that part of reality is the ideas that we come up with, the things we think about, but and I guess that's why they said, oh, it's in the realm of the forms, because you can think about it, you can manipulate it, you can draw inferences from it, even though it's completely in your head, right? But it's real. I think it's
Hmm.
real.
Yeah, but
Just
such a deep concept, like thin in itself, like, Kantian thin in itself, something that beyond perception, something that
oh,
like well, we may assume that what we perceive, it's our brain interprets
right,
every data, and we
sure,
do not see the real thing. We see only what our brain makes
yes,
out of it, but
yeah,
the real thing
right,
is kind of beyond our like we can touch it, we can see it, we can do
right.
anything, but it's a concept, right? And since
It's a
we may,
concept. It's
yeah,
not
since we may describe it, it's also looks real.
right.
Mm.
Whether what do you call it? That's the nominal versus the whatever
Yeah,
the
not
the yeah,
phenomena,
yeah.
or
Uh, I don't know. I mean, I've always been puzzled by that idea that there's something beyond what we can perceive or comprehend. How does he know that there's such a thing? you just said that it is beyond our comprehension. So it's just a supposition that there must be, for all we know, what we
Yeah, but
comprehend and sense is all there is. And so
but this is the idea of qualia, right? We get back to the say like
yeah,
this qualia. It's exactly the thing in itself, since you can
yeah.
you
But
see.
quality, I can feel that. I don't comprehend it completely, right?
Yeah,
I
but you.
qualia, I
Mhm,
can feel it. I don't comprehend it completely. Why, where it comes from, how it comes about. So that is real to me.
mhm.
Feelings are real to me. Sensations are real to me. I believe they're real because
Yeah, but
Uh,
like I see, for example, the computer, right?
mhm,
And my eyes do not see it. My brain makes a picture of a computer
right.
out of signals which come to my eyes.
Yes.
And like from this, like I only can see what my brain interprets as signals coming from, from a thing, but I
Yeah.
don't see the thing. Okay, well, it's very,
Yeah.
yeah, I see. But still, again, still, we may talk about and see that this is real because we may understand both that, like what we're talking about, or at least we may have like similar vague
Right.
understanding. It's the same as
Yeah.
if we talk about, let's say, black matter or
Hmm.
black holes, right?
Right.
Nobody can see it, nobody can touch it.
Yeah.
There's no way how you can interact with a black hole rather
Right.
than by thinking about it
Hmm.
and explain.
Well, but also by looking at evidence of light of lensing, gravitational lensing,
Mhm,
and things like that. But I here's one thing that I also, since reading philosophy and trying to enlighten myself, that I have uh, sort of use as my working hypothesis about the world is truth and reality, especially truth, is it's a continuum.
like a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And we tend to, because of the way we think, we cannot think in terms of continua. That's just not the way our brains are built. In fact, that's one of the things I like to think about. What if all of us did not think in discrete terms, into but are able to comprehend continua?
Hmm.
I wonder what the state of knowledge would be if that's the way we thought and communicated. But anyway, I going back to truth, we basically, truth is for me a statistical concept. If
Hmm.
something seems to I'd say there's a high probability that it's truth. I will never say 100% that something is real or true, but close enough that yeah, as I said, go back to, it works well enough. The
Hmm.
world works right if we assume, for example, that the sun exists.
Hmm.
Then I'm happy with that. I'll go with that, and certainly we've reached so far since millions of years ago, or 2.3 million years ago. And
Hmm.
so I go back to that. It worked well enough. uh let's keep things
Uh,
the way it is.
should it be true? Like it shouldn't be true, right? 100%, or it simply is not true. Like from your point of view, you say that it's a continuum
Hmm.
and it's probabilistic, right? So if it's
Right.
90% true, it makes
Yeah.
sense to believe that this is true and use it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if it works, it
If it
works. It's
works,
great.
yeah.
But
Yeah. And
in your like, would you say that it must be that way, or
uh, oh,
or it
that one is
or we still must strive for like
right.
the general truth or
Oh yeah,
truth with capital?
we should still keep
Uh-huh.
on searching for truth, even though
Mhm.
I fully concede that we will never ever reach at a level where we can say we know absolutely everything about what is true or not true in the world.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean we should still
Stop. Yeah.
that we should give up.
Mm-hmm.
And I like when you said it must be true that. I thought that is a very dangerous
Idea.
way to think, because for example, um, Aristotle's uh, and which was used by Thomas Aquinas as the
Mm-hmm.
proof of existence of God, is basically an argument based on it must be true that it must be the case that there is a God, because the
Yeah,
the
logic.
first mover, the first,
Yeah.
it's that's a dangerous type of thinking. If you just say it must be true that, you're basically saying, well, I can't explain it any other way, and so it must be true that it's because of this. And
Yeah, but
and
still, I guess in this like first mover, they basically use
Mhm.
an axiom like brute facts. So if
Right,
there's like we can go ad infinitum. Let's
yeah,
suppose that the last thing is like God, who the first cause, and everything
right.
else is an effect.
But that
Yeah, but
you know
what caused God? It's also
right.
God. It's also
That's
God, and then it's like
yeah.
kind of
And
loop.
the hidden assumption there is that things have to have an origin,
Hmm.
right? Well, haven't they heard of a circle?
Hmm.
Right. You know?
Yeah, but
And
again,
so
when you start thinking about this infinity, like wow,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
how can you imagine that something is infinite? Like it seems that
Yeah,
we are unable, but still we want to like grasp infinity and say no, this is like
right.
infinite. We like use exactly the word in, meaning like not, and
Not yeah,
finite, like it's
yeah,
not finite, but still
yeah.
we mean something that it's like it expands where like everywhere,
Right.
and it has no end but end. Like we make a concept and say no, this concept it all like it explains that it's a thing, it's one thing, or you know
Right.
it's
Yeah,
very.
I know. Infinity is something also that I generally I lean towards the thought that, well, infinity is just something that we invented, that human
Yeah,
beings
just the
invented.
kind.
That concept, there's really no such thing. I don't think there is a something in the universe that we can genuinely say for sure is infinite, and 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 even the Cantor's notions of infinity, I'm very skeptical about it. Of course, what do I know, right? But it certainly has proved useful.
Mhm.
When he said, let's think about
Yeah,
infinity, and then let
numbers.
numbers, and then let's map it to the natural numbers, and yeah, and we have this infinity, and then a larger infinity, and things like that, and yeah, it's interesting, and it's helped solve a few problems. It lent clarity to certain problems in mathematics and physics. Also has, you know, led to a lot of problems
Yeah,
in
inside. But
in
on the
physics.
on the other on the other hand, as I mentioned, I watched some theories of everything, some channels on YouTube, and some people claim there that they like grasped this infinity and they know what it is,
Right.
and it's a kind of unified object, and
Yeah.
you can't grasp it intellectually. So
Right.
that's what they say.
Yeah.
You can figure it out if you just read about it or think about it. You have to have
Hmm.
direct experience, and direct experience for them means just whatever they want to
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever they want to say. Sit and meditate for 20 years, or
Right.
take psychedelics, or take
Yeah.
something else, and you'll know everything.
Yeah, you only think you know infinity. And so, well, since you pointed to that, the one thing I am very skeptical of, and that's why, even though I am Asian and I'm from Asia, I gravitated more towards Western philosophy in
Hmm.
my readings than Eastern philosophy. First of all, because there's just a lot more material in Western philosophy.
And
But
probably
secondly,
clarity, right? So
yeah,
I like Eastern philosophy for its poetic expression, like when you
yeah, yeah.
read
But
some
I am,
text. Hmm. Go
yeah,
ahead.
but having grown up in a very religious country, I am very, very almost, you would say I'm almost allergic to mysticism.
Mhm.
You know, whenever something starts to get talk about, try to explain things in a mystical way, I said, I'm not interested in that.
Mhm.
You're just uh this is, you're just violating Occam's razor, which
Mhm.
is, I forget, one of my favorite concepts is the principle of parsimony or Occam's razor,
Mhm.
which
Yeah,
which is
I've heard. Like
yeah,
you don't need to make it more complex than
yeah, which is
necessary.
surprising that he didn't use it
Mhm.
himself to ask about the concept of God. Which as I said, we're not aware of the assumptions that we make. He's just assumed that God exists and never even questioned it,
Mhm.
even though the tools are right there in front of him,
Yeah,
right?
but
And
maybe he pays like just his age was it was very dangerous to say that God does
that's
not
true.
exist, right? So.
Yeah, and he does see, he already got into trouble,
Mhm.
right? He had to go to the Holy Roman Emperor for protection because
Mhm.
the Rome was going after him for yeah, but I like that idea. It's not the it's some people say the simplest explanation is the best explanation. I like the more nuanced view of
Mhm.
Occam's razor, that do not invent things just to explain something that you cannot explain.
Mhm.
And I think that's the gist of it. If you
Do
cannot
not
explain
do not invent things to
no
explain
I
things that you cannot explain.
right, for
Okay,
example, by
I
saying,
can.
well, I don't really know what that is, but I think God, there is a God,
Mhm.
and because he made that, and then you come up with reasons why God would make such a thing, or create such a thing. And so you're just inventing new things and new concepts, just so that you explain something that you could not explain.
Do you think
uh,
there's some craving for superiority that motivates people to like invent some concepts and say that they grasp like ultimate
I,
truth? Like,
I, yeah, I think so. I think there are a lot of things that motivate it. I, you know, it's also tied up with the desire for power. I
mhm.
think I do believe that the what you call this? What did Nietzsche say? The the will to power
Mhm.
is a you know a a very fundamental,
For
uh,
us, for humans,
yeah,
like human
yeah, for
nature.
humans. Yeah, not
Mhm.
just the will to survive, the will to power. Now there are a lot of definitions to the will to power, but
Yeah,
but
yeah,
but
that's for
but
sure.
the one I think is works for me the most relevant one for explaining human nature is that we just um, having power makes life easier. If you have power, then or if you have the illusion of power, I think it's and power to me is basically the ability to control your fate,
Mhm.
right? What happens to you, and I think all of us want that feeling
So
of security.
it's not political power. It's more of
No, no,
self control, right?
yeah, it's just a wider view of power,
Mhm.
but
Yeah, I
part
guess
of it
for
is
Nietzsche it was also like it wasn't just you know power in sense of controlling people and
no, yeah,
getting something from it.
right.
But
Yeah, it's not. It's bigger than that, but it's one component that it leads you to want to control people, to be free from whatever stress or angst or worry that makes life unpleasant for you.
Hmm.
And so that's, and I will tie that to, you know, Aristotle said, you know, that man by nature wants to know, right?
Hmm.
I think that's a very optimistic view. Like
This
he by nature wants to know.
will
I
will
think,
will will to knowledge, right? Not will to
yeah,
power, but
yeah,
will to knowledge.
but I think that's very optimistic to him. I think for most people, for all people, man by nature wants to believe,
Hmm.
not to know. People are just content just to have something. They people seek for something to believe in.
Hmm.
And there, a lot of people are perfectly happy for someone to tell them, this is what you should believe in, and it's true, you know. And I will tie that to evolution. We needed that uh, that whatever characteristic species in general for us to be a social species that is able to cooperate and 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 achieve things.
And
And
also, as you said, it makes things like it's not only makes things easier for a person who has power, but
yeah,
also like if you believe in something, and
right.
you don't need to take responsibility for your
No,
actions. You basically, okay,
yeah,
this is true. This person, this authority says
right.
it's true, and I simply follow what
Yeah,
other
it's
people say.
easier, it's simpler, and I do not necessarily say that, well, you are not a very good human being if you're just content to believe, because
Hmm.
society will not function smoothly if
Yeah, if
people
everybody just believes, or
right, you know,
everybody acts on their
yeah,
own
yeah,
assumptions, it's
yeah,
going to be very
right. And
chaotic.
we all believe in, you know, we don't realize it, what, but all of us believe that tomorrow the sun will rise again,
Hmm.
right? We have no reason, even before astrology or astronomy and planetary science, or yeah, even before that, there was no reason to believe that the sun will rise again the next day,
Yeah, but
except that
someday it won't. Right?
yeah,
So-
except that it always has, and we're happy with that, you know. And you know, so, and what was I saying? Why did I talk about yeah,
yeah,
some
I guess
people,
we started from reality and
right?
digress to
Yeah,
beliefs and
yeah. So I
power.
know, yeah,
And,
this is these are things that we
yeah,
can
but
talk
also like
about.
real, right? If you believe in something, it's real for you, even if it's not true, or even if it's not part of your sensual
Right.
your experience. Still, it's true. But is it really true objectively?
No, it's not. I
Right.
mean, what is real is that I believe in it. That's part of reality.
Mhm.
That people, it's, you know, the thing, not the things that people believe in, but that people, certain people believe in certain things.
Mhm.
That to me is real. You know?
Mhm.
And even if they don't, the thing that they believe in isn't real, at least in my point of view, it still affects the world. The fact that they believe in those things, it guides their actions, and you know, you know, and you know,
Mhm.
people's beliefs.
Uh, uh,
Certainly,
I want to ask one more question.
yeah.
It's kind of it came to my mind just recently.
Hmm.
I didn't send you this question. Like
Sure.
this idea of uh, studying philosophy by talking to people. Do you think it's possible? Like now, again, we have the internet, and you basically may connect to everybody you like, or you can connect, like some philosophers. And it seems that you may watch lots of podcasts where there are philosophers sitting, talking to each other,
Hmm.
and you don't even need to read books and something. Like, of course, if you want to go deeper, it it seems that it's necessary to read original works and go back and read Plato, Aristotle, and Epicurus, Seneca,
Right.
like all the other guys. But like, is it necessary? That's the question. And is it possible to become a philosopher simply by talking to people about philosophy and watching other people talking about philosophy on YouTube?
Uh, it depends who you're talking to.
Okay.
Right? You know, you can philosophize
Uh-huh.
just by talking to people, but I think it's a better conversation if you and the people you talk to have at least looked into, have some idea of what the what's in the literature.
Mhm.
You
So
know,
literature is necessary.
literature. I mean the
Yeah, yeah,
philosophical
yeah,
writings.
yeah. I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. You know, I think it's a more interesting conversation
Yeah,
if
but if you watch people who are just read everything already, you just like
yeah,
listen to them. It seems that
right,
at least in my environment, there are very few people who are willing to read philosophical books. I
yeah,
don't mean the internet, but in my town, for
right,
example, if I ask
right,
somebody like go and read Plato,
yeah.
I'll,
Let's say
I won't be
because
understood. Yeah.
because it is hard, you know,
Hmm.
and not only the concepts are hard, but you have to sort of start to get familiar with the language,
Hmm.
right? For example, I I started reading Adam Smith's theory of moral sentiments, which is
Hmm.
one of one of the ideas I like. And again, this goes back to me saying evolution explains. It's a starting point, and that's what I believe in. That the basis for morality is moral sentiments, or there's a biological basis that evolution has built in us certain emotions that we feel certain way, empathy and whatever, because a society without empathy will not function for long.
Hmm.
Uh, but that's going back when I started reading it. I had to get used to the language before I really started to understand it and read all these 18th century. And I haven't read that much because you know, part of it is there are the ideas that endured, and there are some which says you know, oh, no wonder people don't talk about this that Hume said or this that John Locke
Hmm.
said there,
Hmm.
because they're basically, from our point of view, wrong, right?
Hmm. Well, there are like
When you
countless videos on YouTube. You may even go and check like Adam Smith, like this
yeah,
moral sentiments. There's certainly somebody explained it, and the point is that you like everything instead of spending like 10 hours or 20 hours or 100
right,
hours reading a book, you just go get definition, 5 definitions, or people
yeah,
explain it in a video with beautiful pictures, and everything is so clear, and then you don't need
yeah,
to like, and then it seems that you have an understanding that
right,
what
yeah,
there what it is. And but for me,
yeah,
like in my personal experience, it's wrong. So for me, I see clearly that to
yeah,
understand something, it's not about
right,
getting the conclusion, getting the definition. It's about paying attention to
mm-hmm,
particular concept, and the more you pay attention, the better. So if you pay attention for 50 hours to the concept of republic reading Plato, it's
right,
actually good that you're thinking. It's like, so when you read, you also think. Like when you write,
yeah,
you
oh
think, but
yes,
when you read, you also think.
you
And the
also think, yeah,
author leads you, and then you spend these 50 hours, it gets you have some depth. But when you
right,
have just a conclusion in a 5-minute video,
no, no,
essentially you
yes,
have nothing. You forget about it a few days
yes,
after, and doesn't make
yes.
an impact on your life.
I agree with you.
Hmm.
And the only constraint is that unfortunately we don't have all the time in the world to read all
All the books.
all the books, and so we have to pick and choose, and which is what I did. If I find something interesting that catches my attention or my imagination, then I get sidetracked. I look into it, and sometimes it's really very fruitful to read the original work,
Hmm.
you know, and
uh,
sometimes you just don't have time.
what
You
are
just want to.
the, let's say, 3 books which you would recommend to read somebody who wants to start at philosophy? Like
Uh,
three. 3 major philosophical works.
Original works.
Yeah, or maybe
Um,
5. Let's say
yeah.
5.
For me, the one dialogue that I read that I think is still very, very, I don't know if the right word is relevant, but it still speaks to the current situation is I really like Theaetetus,
Uh-huh.
which is like they say it's a founding document of
What was
epistemology.
what was the theme of
What
the?
is knowledge?
Oh,
How
okay.
can you?
No.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right. I think that is of all uh, Plato's dialogues that I've read so far. That's I also listen a lot rather than read because
Mhm.
for some reason I just take in information much easier when listening rather than reading. Some people are different, but it's he did not make me think, well, how do you know that? And not like the Republic or whatever.
Mhm.
That's one book. I would let me think some more. I would say Adam Smith, Theory of Moral Sentiments.
Mhm.
It's hard read because he just over explains things. I think it's something about 18th century writers. They just go on and on and on about
Mhm.
the same uh, idea
Yeah,
to explain.
I've tried to read The Wealth of Nations, but like
Yeah,
it,
I'm an economist by training. The Wealth of
mhm.
Nations is not Adam Smith's, I think,
Best
most
work.
important work. I
Mhm.
think it's Theory of Moral Sentiments,
Mhm.
uh, and 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 Wealth of Nations gets misinterpreted a lot. You know,
Mhm.
he never said. I don't think he ever said that the free market is uh, arrives at the optimal solution always. He said the free market can arrive at the optimal economic solution. I don't think he ever said that, that it is
Mhm.
always whatever the free market comes up with, that is the moral and ethical solution. But anyway, I think they should read The Origin of Species,
Mhm. Darren.
you know, you know. So those are three
3.
and something
But
from
yeah,
Epicurus,
I guess 3 is enough.
three, yeah,
Let's leave it.
in terms of original material.
Yeah. Okay, Raul, it was very nice to talk to you. I appreciate it so much.
Well,
Thank you
thank you
for the conversation.
thank you for inviting me.
Mhm.
You know,
Uh,
so what time is it there now?
in Russia, it's
Yeah.
7:36.
Oh, okay. In the evening.